Welcome to our special dialogue or special interview. Today we have great honor and pleasure to have opportunity to once again talking to Excellency Dr. Suksipana, who is the co-founder and chairman of the Asian Vision Institute and also senior advisor to the Royal Government of Cambodia. Excellency, welcome to our special dialogue. Cambodia-China Free Trade Agreement, it took even less than a year to conclude the negotiation, which is quite amazing in terms of the speed of negotiation. What's your take on this? Why it took so fast to conclude FTA?
Well, I have to put a bit in a context, right?
Yeah.
You know, my main issue on Cambodia trade policy is that we joined WTO, so we have the WTO. But of all these years, you know, we're doing well, right? So there was not really a need to look at other bilateral trade, right? Because we thought, well, we have MFN under the WTO. We have a trade preference with the European Union. We have GSP with the US. So I think we're sort of a bit comfortable, okay? But then the main pressure came when the European Union tried to impose or remove the trade preference under the Everything But Arms. And I happened to be the Cambodian special envoy to go to explain to European Union why they should not, right? And ultimately, we managed to sort of save the trade preference. They only removed 20%. But having said that, it does provoke a sense of anxiety in the Cambodian trade policymaker to say, look, we cannot put all our egg in one basket, right? And the EBA scare is a major factor that motivate Cambodia to seek out other trade opportunity, and particularly in the region. And it happened that China is there. I mean, let's face it, the Belt and Road for the last 6-7 years is there. There's a lot of opportunity arising from that aspect, and we can talk about the BRI later on. But what motivates the bilateral Cambodia-China free trade is exactly that. Yeah.
So how about from the Chinese perspective?
Well, from a Chinese perspective, of course, there's the Belt and Road Initiative.
Yeah.
It is a larger framework right there. You know, I happen to follow nearly a decade already when President Xi Jinping launched that initiative in 2013. You know, so I mean, the idea was there. You know, and later on we moved to Mekong Lanchang, which is sort of like a sub-regional arm of the Belt and Road into our region. And of course, it makes sense, you know, from that perspective, from the trade perspective, to have a bilateral trade agreement with China, you know, because China is already very close with ASEAN, for that matter. And being a good friend of China, and also we have to thank China because they also feel the pressure that we have undergone with the European Union, right? So in that sense, it's a bit sensitive. So that explains why the speed of the negotiation went fast. But again, because Cambodian market is so wide open already, so it's not a lot of tension in terms of negotiating a bilateral agreement. You know, our market is so wide open, the WTO, so we don't have much to protect. You know, because all along our economy has been driven on being open. And that explains why, you know, the negotiation is quite fast. It was more for us to negotiate market access to China rather than China trying to pry open our door in a Cambodian market. Yeah.
We still have a small market.
Yes.
For Chinese product. So because one of the chapter in the free trade agreement also include Belt and Road Initiative.
Yes.
And you mentioned earlier that Belt and Road is kind of a big framework, right?
Yeah.
And maybe CCFTA is just one of the key vehicles
Yes.
implement the Belt and Road Initiative. So can you elaborate a bit more on Belt and Road? Why does it matter for China? Why does it matter for Cambodia?
Well, the Belt and Road, of course, is a grand scheme of China, of course. And for Cambodia, we're part of the Mekong sub-region. And the Mekong sub-region have a cooperation framework under the Belt and Road. We call the Mekong Lanchang cooperation framework, right? So you see, you keep narrowing down, right? Belt and Road, then Mekong Lanchang, then Cambodia, right? So it's sort of like a funnel down, right? And for the Belt and Road, it is quite clear that it's all about, of course, let's be honest, it is a way that the Chinese can project their economic, influence also, right? And for Cambodia, we're a small country, okay? We need all friends. We need the U.S. market, we need the European market, we need the Japanese market, and why not the Chinese market? Right? It makes sense. It makes sense for us. But what is important under the Belt and Road is that, China considers Cambodia as a friend. And that's why if I take, for example, the Sihanoukville zone, for example, it's a deep sea port. So China is looking how to turn Sihanoukville into their Belt and Road, flagship port, for example. Yeah. So this is something very important also in the context of the ASEP, because when you have a deep sea port, it enables you to bring goods in, remanufacture, repackage, produce, and then re-export back. Unlike Laos, which is landlocked, right? But again, look at the Belt and Road in Laos. China is building a fast train, right? Because it's landlocked. But in Cambodia, we don't need to. We have a deep sea port already, right? So in the Belt and Road, they consider that the Sihanoukville could be a multi-model special economic zone for that matter. And we have a lot of Chinese companies who are exporting to third country, who are investing in there. So I think for Cambodia, the Belt and Road matter in a major way, from the productive capacity, which they are coming through the Mekong Lanchang framework, for example. And I can be very specific. Under the Mekong Lanchang framework, in the area of productive capacity, the Tianjin Sino-German University of Applied Science is providing technical assistance. They're building a big training center of engineering, of telecom, of hydraulic, robotic, to train, Cambodian, to enter this the new marketplace would require advanced learning, advanced technology, right? But these are the things that would not happen had it not been for the Belt and Road.
So Sihanoukville perhaps a very special kind of flagship project of the Belt and Road, especially the special economic zones, and the deep sea port is funded and supported by Japan.
Yes.
So in a way, it's kind of a Japan-China project in Sihanoukville. And Cambodia can be a bridging state to connect these two, China and Japan, and using Sihanoukville as a model of how China and Japan can work together to develop the region. Yeah, you mentioned about production capacity. That is a big concern among Cambodian entrepreneurs and producers, even traders, and they think that our production capacity is still low, and so that's why our export capacity also low. And there's a huge potential for Cambodia to export, huge market, but it's depend on our domestic production capacity. And you mentioned about the training, right? A training program to improve skills, technology, and so on. But the role of the state, for instance, what can the state, Cambodian government, do more to improve production capacity, to support the private sector to improve their production capacity?
Well, it's about a learning curve. I mean, again, I always go back as like I would say my baseline is the WTO, which is 20 years ago. If you compare then and now, is a world of difference in the sense of the capacity building that the state, and the development partner who help us build a capacity. In those days, it's all more about trade, basic training, that sort of thing. But now we see they start to move into the era of mechanization, the era of the so-called under the fourth industrial revolution, for example, robotic, building drone, building high technology. So it's a sheer learning curve, If I can tell you an example, it's like, first people start working in garment factory. So, but what does a garment factory does? When the worker are coming from the countryside, when they wake up at the sound of the rooster, so it trained them on the industrial working mindset. And you know what? After a few years, who poached these workers? The banking community. The hospitality industry, the hotel. Okay, so they go and poach this worker from the factory. Now they work in the hotel, well-dressed, well-groomed. And a few years later, who poached them? The banking. It's now you're well-dressed, you know how to greet customer. Now you come and work in the bank, as a teller, for example, like this. So you see, it's a learning curve, right? It's a graduation process. We cannot hope to start from the rural area where people wake up at the sound of the rooster, like I said earlier, and then move into a high-end manufacturing site, right? Japan is a good example where they have invested into this training capacity. But China also are investing big time into this learning curve. You look at around the city, the landscape of Phnom Penh have changed from a horizontal landscape to a vertical landscape. But guess what? What happened with all these construction workers? It's all Cambodian now. Of course, in the early days, when Wat Tanat Tower was designed by a British architect and built by a Korean company, this 30, 40 story, now you see Cambodian can build 40 story. They can build 30 story building close eye. It is all about the learning curve. So I think the government have done a great job to enable this market openness, right? And this is where I think the strength of the Cambodian economy in the context of dealing with China, for example, is that we are open. So in the sense that since there are certain skills we don't have, we allow them to come. But of course, they're not going to move an army of workers. They will bring 20 or 30, foremen or, head of a construction site. But then they train our local people. So to me, there's no shortcut. You got to go through this learning curve, right? So all in all, I would say capacity building in the productive sector, we're there. So it's just a matter of time that the Cambodian company now, mind you, now they are in the position to invest on their own. Before, they relied totally on development partner, totally on the government to support them. Now most of them have in-house training program because they're doing well. So they put aside some money, they train their own worker.
Coming to the agricultural products, because recently I think Cambodia started to export more agricultural products from banana, mangoes, longan to China under CCFTA, yes. For instance. So of course we still at nascent stage in a way. It's a beginning stage in terms of agro industry and agro processing, this kind of agricultural processing companies or factories. So what is your kind of predictions of the agriculture sector and agro industry in Cambodia, and how China-Cambodia FTA can boost this agriculture sector?
First and foremost, I have to say thank you to China for the last 2 years. Because of the COVID, agriculture was spared. The sector was spared. Because China with the free trade, and even before the Cambodian-China free trade, they give us quota to export rice, for example, right? Now 400,000 metric tons, right? Banana, longan, mango, cassava is already there, right? So I would say Cambodia is predominantly an agricultural country. You cannot not recognize that. Government is there, but it employ what? 800,000 people, but Cambodia is 16 million people. So we have to recognize that we are foremost an agricultural, agrarian economy. You got to develop, you got to value add, you got to export your base. And we have that. Now you go to a province, we have all this agriculture that is everywhere. So now we have a market access. China provided market access. But again, with market access in agriculture, it's very sensitive in terms of phytosanitary, because it can bring a lot of pests, a lot of, disease, that sort of thing. So I think it took us a while to have a system of pest control to enable us to export good banana, mango, longan, that sort of thing to China. So in that sense, I would say I'm very grateful that we have this market access. Because agriculture product is very heavy. So you cannot hope to export so far as to Europe. Well, rice is different. Rice is very unique because it fetch a high price, right? So you can afford to export to Europe. But other commodity, number one is perishable. So distance matter, right? So if distance matter, China happened to be the biggest market in a close distance. So it makes sense for Cambodia to work that market. But in the context of the Cambodia-China FTA, I think it's very important that we reach out to China to help us increase the value of our agricultural product. Banana, there's not much you can do, right? It's banana you eat, right? But we have other agro industry. Cassava is one. Rubber is two. Rubber, we have what, like maybe about 500 or 600,000 hectare of planted rubber plantation. It's raw, latex. But this is where we hope to have a processing, a value add. Chinese, Thai company could come and value add the natural rubber, because natural rubber is very good for tire, and particularly for airplane tire. So I think these are the sector that we would encourage, and these are already covered in our investment law. We have identified this sector already, right? So if we can get Chinese company under the Cambodian-China Free Trade Agreement to invest in this sector, it'd be great. Cassava is ethanol, is processed starch. All these are awesome opportunity to raise the value of the product, agricultural product. But what is foremost in a country where poverty in Cambodia still matter is to upgrade the standard living of our farmer. And I can tell you, I've been driving to Siem Reap, to Battambang, to Prairie here in recent week, and I can assure you, I see a world of difference in the quality of rural lifestyle now. Much, much better than 20 years ago when we joined the WTO. So this is where I see agriculture as the backbone of our future. And China can play a big role in that. Because, for example, in cassava, it's old technology. It's 20-year-old technology. It's very easy. It's just a matter of investing, getting a cassava plant, processing plant, getting a contract farming to work with the local producer, and they process. So this is awesome. Yeah.
Just final words from you with regards to the kind of recommendations, so to speak, for the government and also for the private sector in order to optimize CCFTA. Maybe a few recommendations?
Again, back to promotion. promotion of this special agreement. Because the problem is that these agreements are negotiated government to government. And not many private sector are involved, which is normal because that's a type of agreement that only deal with official, right? But now that it's done, again, it's important that the government, the government have to work harder to reach out to the chambers, to the Cambodian Chamber of Commerce, the Phnom Penh Chamber of Commerce, the Provincial Chamber of Commerce, and identify, say, for example, if in Privy here, they have a lot of land for, say, Longan, how do we go there and explain to the Privy here Chamber of Commerce to say, look guys, we have a free trade agreement with China, they are open for our Longan, these are the type, these are the specification, these are the pests you have to be careful, these are the processing you have to go through. And if you work with that, a different province, Battambang is rice, Banti Minche could be cassava, Mondulkiri, Ratnakiri could be rubber. So I think a very focused program. Don't talk in general. Don't talk in Phnom Penh. Phnom Penh people, what? I mean, they drive Land Cruiser, they go eat a nice restaurant. What do they know about what's happening in Mondulkiri? Go to the province. Because you're working at the grassroots. You're working with the producer themselves, who are keen to find a market exit for their product. And to me, that's the best recommendation that I can think of, right, for the government can do. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of our special dialogue. And once again, thank you, Excellency Dr. Soksipana, for spending your valuable time with us today, sharing your perspective on Cambodia-China Free Trade Agreement. So see you next time. Thank you.